Good afternoon, everyone. My warm greetings to all Constitution Day of India. I am Mrs. Sarita Bagh, Head Department of Political Science. On behalf of Kalahandi University, welcome you all to this August gathering of 29th Motivational Talk of Utistata on topic India in a Changing Global Order, Emerging Threats and Challenges. First of all, I'd like to welcome head of this institution, chair of this program, our Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kalahandi University, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy sir to this forum. Welcome you sir, thank you. My hearty welcome goes to esteemed Registrar of Kalahandi University, Sri Pitambar Bhoi sir. You are welcome sir. I extend my warmest welcome to our esteemed invited guest, today's speaker, today's resource person, Professor Chintamani Mahapatra sir, who is currently Rector, Pro Vice Chancellor of JNU, and Professor of American Studies at the School of International Studies, JNU. Welcome you, sir. It's our utmost honor and great pleasure to have you today on the dais. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and gracing the occasion with your gracious presence. My warm welcome goes to Professor Netaji Abhinandan sir, Assistant Professor of Political Science, Ravenshaw University, Cuttack. Welcome you sir to this program. It's a really great privilege for us to have you with us today. Thank you sir. Welcome you again. I would also like to welcome Deputy Registrar, Head Department of English, come convener of this program, Dr. Captain Jaidev Sahu sir, Miss Khushbu Agrawal, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, all distinguished faculty, eminent personalities from various parts of the state, across the country, my colleagues, all distinguished faculty members of Kalahandi University, all sincere participants, and my dear students to this program. Welcome you all. Thank you. Welcome you all. Once again, I welcome you all to this program. May I now request Lipsa Maharana to present a song. Miss Lipsa Maharana.
ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ମୋର ପ୍ରଣାମ ବହୁତ ବହୁତ ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ। सर्वेषां 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 सर्वेषानो जननी भारत धरणी कल्पलतीयम् जननी वत्सलतनय गणेशत् सम्यक् कर्म विधेयम् सर्वेषां 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 सर्वेषानो जननी भारत धरणी कल्पलतीयम् जननी वत्सलतनय गणेशत् सम्यक् कर्म विधेयम् हिमगिरि सीमन्तितमस्तक मधुमिद परिमुदि परिगत पार्श्वम् अस्मद जन्मद मन्नद मनिष श्रोत्र पुरातनमार्षम् विजनित हर्षं भारतवर्षं विश्वोत्कर्ष निदानम् भारत सर्वमणि कृतमस्माभिः नवमिदमैक्यविधानम् सर्वेषां 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 धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Lipsa. Thank you so much. May I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir to address the platform. Sir, it's over to you.
It is, as it is told, the runner of a long track goes slow but very firm steps and reaches the ultimate goal. So I welcome our speaker of the day, the 29th speaker of Utistata, who belongs to the area of Kalahandi. And the family is very closely attached to the temple of Lord Jagannath. and another reputed name in literature, though a student of political science, Netaji Abhinandan. So both of them, they have actually decorated our 29th Uttishtata with their presence. So when I look ahead, it may be Aurobindo's Renaissance of India or the dreams of the rishis of Bharat. We have unique knowledge, potential, and gradually we are going ahead. As if it is told, a bird never gives fragrance. When it blooms, it gives fragrance. So similarly, probably we are in a blooming stage now. Srimad Bhagavad Gita is decoded, and our Indian people, even an Oriya, is behind that decoding process of Bhagavad Gita. So it has a going to be a very big impact, and India will be the leader to show the path to the whole world. So it is our privilege that we will be listening to Professor Mahapatra today, and maybe many strides of light will open to think and go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind and generous words. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Professor Netaji Abhinandan, sir, Assistant Professor of Revensa University, Cuttack, to deliver welcome address and guest introduction. Sir, now it's over to you, Professor Abhinandan, sir.
Thank you. କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟର ସମ୍ମାନନୀୟ କୁଳପତି ପ୍ରଫେସର ସଞ୍ଜୟ କୁମାର ଶତପଥୀ, କୁଳ ସଚିବ ଏବଂ ଆଜି ଉତ୍ସବର ଯେ ମୁଖ୍ୟ ଆକର୍ଷଣ ମୋର ପରମ ପୂଜ୍ୟ ଗୁରୁ ପଥ ପ୍ରଦର୍ଶକ ପ୍ରଫେସର ଚିନ୍ତାମଣି ମହାପାତ୍ର, ମୋର ଛାତ୍ରୀ ଏକଦା ଥିବା ସରିତା ଏବଂ ଏହି ଉତ୍ସବରେ ଯୋଗ ଦେଇଥିବା କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟ ଏବଂ ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟର ଛାତ୍ରଛାତ୍ରୀ ଗବେଷକ ମାନେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଅଭିନନ୍ଦନ ଜଣାଉଛି। କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ହେଉଛି ଦେବଭୂମି। କଳାରେ ଅନନ୍ୟ, ସଂସ୍କୃତିରେ ଅନନ୍ୟ, ପରମ୍ପରାରେ ଅନନ୍ୟ, ଯୋଉଠି ସବୁଠୁ ଏକଦା ଉତ୍କୃଷ୍ଟ ଧାନ ଉତ୍ପାଦନ ହେଉଥିଲା। ଛତ୍ରେ ଛତ୍ରେ ଇତିହାସର ଛତ୍ରେ ଛତ୍ରେ କଳାହାଣ୍ଡିର ଗୁଣ ଗାରିମା ଲିପିବଦ୍ଧ ହେଇ ରହିଛି। କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ଆଉ ସେଇ ପୁରୁଣା କାଳର ପଛୁଆ ଜିଲ୍ଲା ହେଇ ନାହିଁ। କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ଆଜି ସବୁ କ୍ଷେତ୍ରରେ ଆଗରେ, ବହୁତ ଆଗରେ ଏବଂ ଆଗକୁ ଆଗକୁ ମାଡ଼ି ଚାଲିଛି। ଏବଂ ସେଇ କଳାହାଣ୍ଡିରେ ଯେ ଗୋଟିଏ ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟ ପ୍ରତିଷ୍ଠିତ ହେଇଛି, ଏହା ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କ ପାଇଁ ଗର୍ବ ଗୌରବର କଥା। ଏବଂ କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟ ଦିନେ ବିଶ୍ୱର ଶିକ୍ଷା ମାନଚିତ୍ରରେ ସ୍ଥାନ ପାଇବ, ଏଥିରେ ସନ୍ଦେହ ନାହିଁ। ଏହି ଅନୁକ୍ରମରେ ଆଜି ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଉତ୍ତିଷ୍ଠତ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମ ଏକ ଅଭିନବ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମ। ଏହା ନୂଆ କୁଳପତି ପ୍ରଫେସର ସଞ୍ଜୟ ଶତପଥୀଙ୍କ ମାନସ ପ୍ରସୂତ। ମୁଁ କହି ରଖେ ଯେ କୁଳପତି ଆପଣମାନଙ୍କ କୁଳର ପତି, କିନ୍ତୁ ଯାହାଙ୍କ ସହିତ ମୋର ପିଲାଦିନରୁ ଅତ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଅଭେଦ୍ୟ ଅନ୍ତରଙ୍ଗ ସମ୍ପର୍କ ରହିଆସିଛି, ଯାହାଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ରହିଲେ ସବୁବେଳେ ଝୁଣା ଅଗୁରୁ ଚନ୍ଦନ କର୍ପୂର ବାସେ। ତେଣୁ ଦେବଭୂମିରେ ଦେବ ପୁରୁଷ ହିଁ ସେ ଉଭା ହେଇଛନ୍ତି କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟର କୁଳପତି ଭାବରେ। ଏବଂ ମୁଁ ଜାଣିବାକୁ ପାଇଲି କୁଳପତିଙ୍କ ଠାରୁ ଯେ ଉତ୍ତିଷ୍ଠତ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମରେ ଆଗରୁ ପ୍ରତିଭା ରାୟ, ରାଜକିଶୋର ମିଶ୍ର, ମନୋରମା ମହାପାତ୍ର ଏବଂ ଆହୁରି ଅନେକ ବିଦ୍ୱାନ ଆସି ଏହି ମଞ୍ଚରେ ଭାଷଣ ଦେଇ ସାରିଛନ୍ତି। ତେଣୁ ଏହା ଏକ ଅଭିନବ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମ। ଏଭଳି ଆଗକୁ ଅନ୍ୟାନ୍ୟ ବହୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକ୍ରମ ହେବ ଯୋଉଥିରେ କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟର ମର୍ଯ୍ୟାଦା ବୃଦ୍ଧି ପାଇବ। ସବୁବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ ଗୁରୁଙ୍କର ଯେତେବେଳେ ଉପକ୍ରମଣିକା ଦବାକୁ ହୁଏ ବା ତାଙ୍କୁ ପରିଚିତ କରେଇବାକୁ ହୁଏ, ଏଭଳି ଏକ ବିରଳ ସୌଭାଗ୍ୟ ଏ ଛାତ୍ର ପକ୍ଷରେ ଜୁଟିଛି। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ମୁଁ କଳାହାଣ୍ଡି ବିଶ୍ୱବିଦ୍ୟାଳୟର କୁଳପତି ଅନ୍ୟ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ କୃତଜ୍ଞ। As you all know, that Professor Chintamani Mahapatra is a world-renowned academic in the field of international relations. Currently, he is working as the rector or pro-vice chancellor of prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University, and he is also a professor of American Studies, and he is also the editor of very renowned journal called Indian Foreign Affairs Journal. He has held positions such as member UGC Review Committee, Area Studies Program, member Fellowship Expert Committee, ICSSR, and he was in the editorial board of Strategic Analysis, IDSA. He was member in the editorial board of Diaspora Studies and several other members. And I must tell the audience that he was also the Tagore Chair Professor at Yunnan University of China. He has conducted research in several US presidential libraries and US National Archives, British Public Records Office in London, and he has authored 4 books, edited 3 books, and has contributed chapters to about 30 edited books, and he has 70 research articles in reputed journals to his credit. He had also received Fulbright Fellowship, Commonwealth Fellowship, visiting fellowship in US, UK, Austria, Australia, and many other countries. The list is quite long. Let me tell you that you could not have got a better person than Professor Mahapatra to address you on the issue of India and the emerging world order. He is the best expert, and he's a very fine orator. He has in-depth knowledge about the dynamics of the evolving world, and I'm very much sure that he will enlighten you with his lecture. But let me tell you, above all, if you look at him, से जने प्रज्ञावान पुरुष केवल आंतर्जातिक राजनीति नुहे बा कूटनीति नुहे वेद उपनिषद पुराण रामायण महाभारत संस्कृतर अन्यान्य ग्रंथ उपरे तांकर असंभव दक्षता अछि दखल अछि आमे जेतेबेले कथा हो आमे राजनीति अपेक्षा आमे राष्ट्रनीति एवं दर्शन आध्यात्मिकता उपरे बेसी आलोचना करू तेणु जने प्रचंड विद्वान एवं प्रज्ञावान पुरुष एवं सबुठु बड़ कथा कहबी से होचंती आज भी से निजकू कलाहांडी माटीर पुओ हिसाब रे परिचित करांती तांका सहित दीर्घ दिन संपर्क रे मु देखिछि से जेते बड़ पदवी रे थांतु ना काहींकी जेतेबेले कलाहांडी रु डाकरा आसे से केबे हेले एडै पारंती नाही जदि को बंधुर झियो बाहागर अछि से सुदूर दिल्ली रु आसी भुवनेश्वर पुणी कलाहांडी जाइकी जेमिति हेले जोग दियंती जेकोनसी पारिवारिक संपर्क उत्सव हो किंबा कोनसी सामाजिक उत्सव जेतेबेले निज जन्म माटी रु डाकरा आसे से केबे हेले मना करंती नाही तेणु कलाहांडी माटीर एभली एक जने सुयोग्य दायर प्रोफेसर चिंतामणि महापात्र को आज आम पाइछु विश्वविद्यालय पक्षरु एवं एही अवसर रे आउ थरे मते एही मंच सहित जोड़ी होबा पई सुयोग देइथिबारु कुलपति प्रोफेसर संजय शतपथी को धन्यवाद दउची एवं आपण मानकु शुभेच्छा जणाउची आजिर कार्यक्रम पई धन्यवाद
Thank you so much, sir, for such wonderful guest introduction and introducing the objective of this webinar in such a unique manner. Sir, your precious words mean a lot for all of us. And I do believe that definitely your kind words and motivating words, it will help the newborn university, Kalahandi University, to go ahead and ahead. Really, sir, today really we are privileged and we are honored to have such eminent personality, world-renowned intellectual, a great political scientist, son of the soil, with us today. As Sir has given us the introduction, as Sir is the founder and honorary chairman of Kalinga Institute of Indo-Pacific Study and the editor of Indian Foreign Affairs Journal. And also, Professor Mahapatra has held a very esteemed position, such as member of UGC Review Committee, Area Studies Program, a member of Fellowship Expert Committee ICSSR, editor of Indian Foreign Affairs Journal, member editorial board Strategic Analysis IDSA, member editorial board Diaspora Studies and member Committee on Studies, Academy of International Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia. Sir, really we are honored, really we are privileged to have you with us today, sir. So now may I request Professor Chintamani Mahapatra, sir, for his deliberation. Sir, now the floor is over to you. Thank you, sir.
Namaskar and good evening to all of you. Honorable Vice Chancellor of Kalahandi University, Registrar, Deputy Registrar, Dr. Abhinandan, Sarita, our student of JNU. I'm so delighted and so sentimental for getting this invitation to share some of my thoughts on an extremely important issue. Not today, even yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'm feeling emotional because I'm truly the son of the soil. And I remember that if you really want to grow, then you have to remain rooted on your soil. A tree like banyan tree, वो जितना ऊपर जाता है जमीन के नीचे भी उतना उसका रूट जाता है. If the root is superficial, the tree can break down. So this is a message to the students. Be rooted in your culture, in your society, in your place of birth, in your country. Then only you can grow better. I tried that. And whatever little achievements I have made, I myself consider myself lucky. When I was going to a school in Bhawanipatna, I think even today, if there is heavy rain, the school closes down. And when I go to Washington, D.C. and interact with people in the State Department and Defense Department and give lectures in the universities, I feel really great. Because when I came to JNU as a student, I got a culture shock. Culture shock. I was not able to speak English properly, not very articulate in Hindi. Nobody would understand Odia in JNU. But I struggled very hard. I learned through the way. And this particular opportunity that I've got, I was dreaming about it for decades. I go to Bhawanipatna also, but I never get a chance to interact. My next dream is to visit Bhawanipatna, in person go to Kalahandi College and interact with the faculty and the students. That will be much better. And that is my dream, and I will get it fulfilled somehow. In this webinar, which is virtual world, let me share some of my thoughts within the given time. Next time, maybe I would love the opportunity to speak less and listen to all of you more, because I always learn from the questions. Now, if somehow I'm able to conclude, because one problem with the professors, if you give them a mic and allow them to speak, they become non-stop. I'll try my best not to be like that. And if there are questions, I can try to answer that. Right. Jagannath Swami Nayana Pathagami Bhavatume. I love the song that was sung by the little girl, Sarvesham, right? Now, if you go deeper into the Indian philosophy, you have the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is one family. That has been the guiding principles of Indian civilization. Even when the Indian civilization expanded, we never expanded with military force. You have a Kalinga tribe in the Philippines. You have Buddhism in Japan and South Korea. You have Ramayana and Mahabharata in Indonesia. You have Buddhism in China as well. All the Indian culture and philosophy expanded to the rest of the world without the use of military force. Because the Indians, in their own DNA and RNA, they think that the whole world is one family. And we are always prepared to give our knowledge, our experiences to the rest of the world. This is the age of intellectual property rights. Every scientist who claims to have invented something new would apply for IPR. But imagine yoga. Now, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi goes to Washington, D.C. and speaks to the American legislators in a joint session of the American Congress. He says, yoga is a contribution to the universe, and India does not claim IPR. That is India. However, in the evolution of mankind, all of you know very well that before 15th of August 1947, the India that we are living in today was not there. It was a British colony with hundreds of small, large, medium-sized kingdoms in the Indian subcontinent. At that time, the global order was based on colonialism and imperialism. There were not many independent states. The moment World War II comes to an end and the decolonization process begins, then that was an extremely important watershed in the evolution of world politics and international relations. Most of the colonial powers of Europe were completely decimated in terms of their economic activities. And they did not have the capacity to hold on to the empires, to their respective colonies anymore. And from that World War II, end of the World War II, we saw the birth of two superpowers. There was no concept of even superpower before that. The United States and the former Soviet Union. India faced a very big challenge in that kind of evolving world order because the two superpowers began to fight ideologically, economically, diplomatically, and even militarily in very many ways. And how did India respond to the challenge? Indian government, that time headed by Prime Minister Nehru, articulated a concept of non-alignment. But because of the Indian talent and the skill of the political leaders, our role in the global order was fascinating. I would say, looking back to the past, it was fascinating. When India became independent, we were not even able to produce a pencil or a pen in India, all imported from Britain. And the students of history will know better what kind of colonial exploitation took place, right? And when India became independent, the largest concentration of poor people in the world were in India. The largest concentration of illiterates in the world were in India. India's agriculture was completely decimated. India faced deindustrialization. With that kind of modest beginning, when India played a role in the global order, was not that fantastic? Without having sufficient military capability or the economic wherewithal, India could become the leader of the non-aligned movement. 100 plus countries, most of them developing countries. And what kind of role it played during that Cold War, what came to be known as the Cold War between the US and the USSR? India demanded establishment of a new international economic order which would be more equitable. India demanded establishment of the new information order because information was one-sided. It was flowing from the West to the rest of the world. Then there was North-South dialogue. India played tremendous amount of role even as a neutral observer in Korean War, in Vietnam War. India was a respected country and which was expected to resolve the problem in those countries. But another watershed came. That was in the late 1970s. Sorry, early 1970s. There was a war between India and Pakistan. There was a war earlier also. I'm not going into the details. After the 1971 war with Pakistan, India became literally a superpower in South Asia because Pakistan was divided. A new country took birth. India became a superpower in terms of its size, its economy, its military capabilities, its political legitimacy, you just name it. 3 years after that war, India demonstrated its capability to build up nuclear weapon. So India became a de facto nuclear weapon power. Before that war, as we were struggling with our newly won independence and how to consolidate our economy, we had famines, we had drought, we are dependent of the outside world, even for food. Food assistance used to come to India. But in the early 70s, India's position changed. India became self-sufficient in food production. Even now, India is self-sufficient in food production. Of course, some of you may be thinking, if that is so, why there is hunger, why there is starvation and death? That's a different kind of question that we can handle later. But the fact remains that India does not depend on import of food from outside anymore. That happened in the early 1970s. India's strength, India's ability to play an autonomous role increased in spite of the fact that we are a close Soviet ally at that time in the midst of the Cold War between the US and the USSR. Then, by the late 1970s, an important development took place. The Soviet Union militarily intervened in Afghanistan. And the Americans began to fight with the Soviets. That hot war in the backdrop of the Cold War continued for 10 years. And after 10 years, there was another change in the global order. A superpower like the Soviet Union disintegrated into 15 different independent republics. The students of political science must be studying in the classroom the meaning of a state, area, people, government, sovereignty. And then every country would have a military to protect the national sovereignty. The US had the capability to destroy the whole world multiple times. But even then, it could not keep the political consolidation proper, and it cracked up into 15 different independent countries. A major change in the global order took place because one pole, one superpower just collapsed, disintegrated. We had a new kind of world order. That time, the Americans began to bask in the glory of winning the Cold War without firing a shot. There was no war. And then the world appeared to be a unipolar world order. What would India do now? When the two big powers were fighting, we said, we are not with you, we are independent, autonomous, non-aligned. But we managed to have good, positive relationship with both Washington and Soviet Union in certain sectors. But now the Cold War is over. The bipolar structure of the globe is now gone. What did India do? The relationship between India and the US became much closer. There was no need for any kind of non-aligned movement. India at that time had become economically stronger, socially more stable, right? But as it evolved, in the post-Cold War era, with a unipolar kind of structure in the world, India did not lose its strategic autonomy or the capacity to take foreign policy decisions on the merit of it, despite going closer towards the United States. Many people thought that if we go too close to the USA, then we might lose our autonomy, our independence of thought and decision-making on global politics. That did not happen. But again, roughly in another 10 years' time, there was a major change in the world yet again. If you observe the pattern of what I'm saying and how, from the end of the world, end of the Second World War, different kind of changes were occurring in the global order, the changing dynamics of the global order, and how India was facing different kind of challenges and coming to terms with it. Now, in this yet another round of global change, a major global change, another fascinating event took place. And that took place because of the 9/11 incident, the terrorist attack on the United States of America. Like the Soviet collapse, it was spectacular. The Soviet collapse or disintegration was important because a mighty superpower with tremendous amount of military capabilities could not keep the country in order, could not prevent the division of the country. A major change. Now, when we see that in the unipolar world order, the most powerful country in the world, the richest country in the world, the country with the overkill capacity was attacked by whom? Not by the Russians, not by the Chinese, not by any major power. It was by a handful of terrorists. It was spectacular. 15, 16 people like you and me going to the US, getting the training of how to fly an aeroplane, then flying in a synchronized manner the aeroplanes and hitting the World Trade Center in New York, trying to hit the Pentagon building in Washington, D.C., was out of the world. Because the World Trade Center was a symbol of economic power, World Trade Center. And the Pentagon, which is the Defense Department of the USA, was the symbol of military power. And these terrorists, they gave a big challenge to the most powerful military in the world and a symbol of prosperity in New York. What has changed? They used the aeroplane as a missile. They didn't have any intercontinental ballistic missile or short-range missile or anything. The aeroplane itself was the missile. And the fuel inside the aeroplane turned out to be the explosive bomb. And the world again changed. The world order again changed. A global war on terrorism unfolded. How did India handle this new world order, changing world order again? That time, India had Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji as the Prime Minister. And when the 9/11 incident took place, we knew that we had a role there. Because from 1989 until 2001, consistently we were facing the terrorist threat in Kashmir. Not a single day would pass without a news headline of some people getting killed somewhere, some bomb exploding somewhere, some guns barking somewhere in Kashmir. So when the 9/11 terrorist attack took place, Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, with open hands, he told the American government, India is prepared to give unconditional support to the United States in the war against terrorism. What a promise. Bhisma Pratigya. Nobody offered that kind of help in the past. Nobody is going to offer that kind of help in the future anywhere in the world. Unconditional support, right? In the kind of world order that we had, the United States did not accept the American help directly because their goal was different. It was Pakistan, which was strategically located. It had a border with Afghanistan. The real problem was Pakistan and not Afghanistan, not Taliban at that time. The Pakistan had the umbilical cord with the Taliban fighters there. Osama bin Laden was hiding there, right? So in order to put pressure on Pakistan, the US did not take unconditional support from India. But the way India conducted its diplomacy is again great history. Although Pakistan became a frontline state of the US war against the Taliban in Afghanistan, they received billions of dollars of American assistance. wanted to improve the military capabilities more and more. It so happened that during the 8 years of George Bush administration, US and India became very close strategic partners. There are many issues, but one of the most important elements of the strategic partnership is an understanding to have collaboration in civil nuclear technology. When India conducted the nuclear test in 1998, the US imposed sanctions against India. That was in 1998. And lo and behold, in a matter of few years, the US was ready to help India with nuclear technology. Was it not a diplomatic marvel? It was. Did Pakistan get that kind of support? No. Did China get that kind of help from the US? No. Did India get? Yes. That solidified the Indo-US strategic relations, partnership with the US. Many people argued that we'll be surrendering our sovereignty to the USA by going close to the USA, and we cannot conduct any more nuclear tests. All kinds of arguments were paraded for political reasons. But ultimately, the most important aspect of that is India no longer became a target of the technology denial regimes of the United States. And then, as again India evolved, earlier we had a different kind of economic system. We wanted to have a socialistic pattern of economic growth and development. But then Indian economy could not grow. People called it Hindu rate of growth. From 1991 onwards, 6 months before the Soviet collapse, we began our economic reform. So with this kind of changes in the global order, today when we see India's position in the world has improved considerably. There are still large number of Indians who are not literate. But the number of Indians who have got PhD already outnumber the total population of many, many countries. Yes, India was one of the most poverty-stricken countries in the world that time when we became independent. As we evolved, today we have more millionaires in India than the total population of Australia. Yes, at that time, large number of Indian people did not have the purchasing power. But today, India is proud of its expanding middle class. So when an European company, an American company is looking at India, they don't look at only the negative side. They see it's a huge market. And India has become the third largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. Even in terms of total GDP, India's position is swinging between 5th and 6th. Recently, before the pandemic hit the world, India's position was 6th in terms of the GDP. And the position 5th belonged to the United Kingdom, our colonial masters of yesteryears. But India replaced the UK to get the 5th position in the world in terms of GDP. India today is recognized as one of the IT superpowers in the world. India today produces agricultural products. In most of the agricultural products, India's position is on the top 5 in the world. It's not Government of India statistics. It is international statistics, World Food Program statistics. Even on livestock, cows, buffaloes, goats, and all those, India is one of the largest producers in the world. Many people in India did not get milk, particularly the kids. I remember when I was going to the school in Bhabanipatna, we were getting milk powder. That milk powder used to come from the United States under PL 480. But today, when I read in the paper and I see before my eyes that India is one of the largest producers of milk in the world, it makes me feel so proud as an Indian. India became a victim of foreign aggression a few months after becoming independent. The Pakistanis attacked India in 47, 48. Then again, in 62, China attacked. In 65, Pakistan attacked. In 71, again, Pakistan created a lot of problem and we had to fight a war. Then all of you know about the Kargil war, right? Today, India is a nuclear weapon power. It's fine, we're not a de jure power under the definition of the NPT, but the world has recognized India as a nuclear weapon power, and that is very clearly reflected in the kind of nuclear deal we have with the US, with Japan, with Australia, with European countries, and all. It's recognized as a responsible nuclear weapon power. So in terms of defense and security, in terms of economic capability, in terms of literacy, and other kind of indexes in the Human Development Index, today India is much, much better than what it was 70 years ago. People can make a political point, 70 saal ho gaya, kya kar raha hai India? 70 years is a very small time when you talk about global history and the evolution of the international order, global order. Whatever we have achieved is miraculous. Everyone talks about China's miracle, economic miracle. Most of the Chinese people speak the same language, belong to the same group, and they have a communist government, and the communist government can decide whatever they want. But we are a vibrant democracy, damn it. The largest democracy in the world, the most diverse country in the world, and it is such a wonderful democracy today that when the election takes place, maybe a PhD in political science doesn't go to vote, but गांव वाला जाता है वोट देने के लिए गांव लोग को जाएगी गरीब लोग को वोट दियंती खाली वोट दियंती नहीं they change the government not once many times over. The so-called educated people or great political leaders, they cannot take for granted the Indian people today for a variety of reasons. So it is a vibrant democracy. Political consciousness is there in every kitchen in the world, in the country. It is economically doing better. So I would say that India has consolidated its position as one of the emerging global player in the world. It's a member of G20. American presidents, European presidents listen to India, what our Prime Minister says. It's a member of so many multilateral institutions. It is aspiring to become a member of the UN Security Council. So we have done pretty well. Does it mean that everything is hunky-dory? Not at all, not at all. Miles to go before I sleep. In fact, thousands of miles to go before India sleeps. Poverty is still there. And the pandemic is creating another kind of changes in the global order, which was not there before. You know, when the pandemic started, some of you may be on my Facebook, I prepared a very short video. And I said, in my view, Third World War had started. And this war is not between superpowers, not between two countries, nation states. It is between the human beings and the non-humans. This is the opportunity for the humans to come together, forget about our differences, and fight against the pandemic. I wrote that in a very sentimental way. But soon I found that no, pandemic is in a very big way altering the global political economies, the strategic order. There are many, many countries in the world which could not have developed, they have not developed their vaccines. Right? There was vaccine nationalism. Donald Trump would approach a German company, you make a vaccine only for the Americans. And the company said no, because the German government had already given the money. The Chinese are bragging about fighting the pandemic in a much better way than the rest of the world. And all of you know what happened in India. The second wave was devastating. But the fact remains that remembering the traditional Indian goal of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, India not only tried to handle the situation by developing the vaccine in India, but also donated in millions to the neighboring countries and many, many countries. Many people criticize the government. अरे देश के अंदर इतना समस्या है, तुम क्यों बाहर भेज रहे हो? इसीलिए second wave हुआ. But now India has been able to handle the second wave much better than Europe. See the figures in Europe and America, fourth wave, fifth wave. Horrendous, horrible stories, heartrending stories. India is becoming stable. India has prepared itself to help the rest of the world. Yet again, we are selling our vaccines. Unprecedented. We even gave help to France and Italy and even America and whatnot. Could it have been possible in 47, 48? Last time when we had a pandemic, that time about 12 or 13 million Indians died. 120 lakh. Compared to that, we have done much better. However, India has a lot of problems. There is rising inequality in India. Lot many people need to be educated, not getting a degree only. Kalahandi University or JNU, many students may get a degree. What is important is employability. अरे भाई डिग्री मिलने के बाद नौकरी नहीं है, क्या करोगे डिग्री लेके? Right? And we have to do that. Once the students complete their courses, they should have some job somewhere. We have a long way to go. Right? Even income inequality is still there. Social inequality is slowly going. Right? So we have lots of problems. We have challenges just outside India. This side, China is emerging as a superpower along Indian border. And all of you have seen what is happening in LAC or line of actual control. We have a big challenge there. This side, Pakistan continues to pose a threat as far as terrorism is concerned. The Taliban is again, back to power in Kabul. It's a very dangerous development. However, I have a reasonably good amount of confidence that we are better prepared today than before in handling any kind of challenges, including health insecurity. So I can go on and on and on, but I'm looking at the time also. So let me stop here and just share my idea that we are a confident nation today. We are going to do better. We have a lot of things to do, but we have achieved a lot. So with this, let me stop here and let's have the rest of the program. Thank you very much, Professor Satpathy. If I would not have met you in Bhubaneswar, I would not have got this opportunity. It was so nice of you. You touched my heart. You invited me to the Kalahandi College. I got this opportunity to talk to the students and the faculty. It is very pleasing to me. But I assure you that I would like to come and shake my hands with you in Kalahandi and interact with the faculty and the students. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are having some queries in the chat box. Sir, would you like to respond?
Yeah, why not? You can read out briefly the question. I'll be brief.
Yes, sir. The first question is put by Mohan BC, sir. Question is that, sir, why was NAM important during the Cold War? What is the importance of NAM?
Okay, very briefly, we had just become independent after 200 years of British colonial rule. After World War II, Britain was defeated, the US, another white country, became the superpower. Now, the moment you become part of either the Soviet group or the American group means you are mortgaging your decision making. You become an alliance partner. And in any kind of unequal relationship, the larger partner would have a more say, would have better say, and can control you, can direct you, than if you are independent and autonomous. So at that time, Pandit Nehru thought, instead of yet again becoming a tail of the big two kites, America and the Soviet Union, let us try to have an independent path. Non-alignment does not mean, distance from the major powers. Although the term is non-alignment, it had a positive connotation, like non-violence. Non-violence is not negative, it is positive. So he argued that non-alignment policy simply means friendship with all. We are prepared to seek help, assistance, guidance, whatever is required from all centers of power, and we will rather prefer to be non-aligned than be with either this bloc or that bloc. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are having another question that is put by Assistant Professor of English, Sri Sanjeev Sahu, sir. What is your view on liberalization of the economy, which gave birth to new forms of governance in the world, which favored the capitalist only and led to the establishment of authoritarianism, shrinking the space of humanity and dissent in the bigger democracy of the world? India, in particular, in the last one decade, has compromised with the democratic values by following the capitalist form of economy. So, sir, what is your response on this?
Capitalism in pure form is exploitative. Communism in pure form is exploitative. Let me share just one incident. Stalin once forgot his pipe. He used to use pipe, and he was furious. Then he went home. He could not smoke that day. Next day when he came, there were 25 people standing in the queue. So somebody asked, "Why are you standing in the queue?" "Sir, we are prepared to confess that we have stolen the pipe." Then Stalin said, "But I forgot it at home." That kind of terror. Today in China, you have Xi Jinping. He's all in all. When Hu Jintao, the Chinese president, comes to Bangalore, and somebody from the Infosys says, "Why don't you allow the Indian companies to come to China?" And he said, "Done." Can an Indian prime minister make a promise like this? He will lose his job. So, in extreme form, any kind of ideology is bad. In idealistic form, everything is good, like democracy is good. But we know how people vote. We know the role of money, the role of muscle power, the role of so many things during the election time. So capitalism has its positive aspect, and communism has its also positive aspect. When India embraced capitalism, many people should realize that before India did, much earlier than that, China did that in 1978. Our reform began in 1991. Two poor people cannot do any trade. Two weak people cannot build their muscles. It is a competitive world. Capitalism of some kind can lead to innovation, competition. There is growth. But there are demerits as well. When the whole world is having that kind of thing, could India become an autarky? नहीं, जो इंडिया में वही खाएंगे वही करेंगे. Could India have developed? No. So that is why I would rather say that India's position today is much better in terms of the number of rich people, the number of upper middle class, the number of lower middle class. It is all because of those economic reforms. And by the way, it was not accepting capitalism, the naked capitalism, and hugging them. It was very much regulation, regulated. Earlier, the economy was too much of regulation. It was a relaxation of the regulation, which was good for India. And that shows not only in our growth rate, in our development also. I would say that. By the way, I'm not a capitalist, not a communist. I'm a realist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such enlightening, highly stimulating, and thought-provoking session. Thank you, sir, for sharing your wisdom, unique approach, deep insights on India's role in a changing global order. Sir, in a very short span of time, you talk about many challenges, threats that India has encountered and is continuing to encounter to become emerging power. Sir, you highlighted how India has always played a global role since its independence. Inadequate economic development, limited military capabilities, regional constant posed by neighboring aggressors, and enormous domestic difficulties have not prevented at all India from leading the non-alignment movement, group of 77, playing an active role in United Nations and making its voice heard on all critical issues such as disarmament, North-South dialogue, and various trade negotiations. Sir, we may say in other words, India has acted as a global player against all odds and obstruction. Sir, also you argued that India has countless problems at home, in our own country. But despite that, all these difficulties and drawbacks, India's voice in the world affairs carries considerable weight. It needs to be emphasized that even when India was agriculturally, industrially backward and was unable to produce enough food for its and was receiving food aid from abroad and other countries, and its military was not very powerful. Also, its existence as an independent international actor was a post Second World War development. So, India could play the role of a leader of more than 100 members of non-aligned movement group of 77, and was in forefront of the movement seeking a new international economic order and a new international information order. Also, sir, you opined that at present India is credible nuclear weapon and missile power, a respected member of the group of G20, large country with an increasingly dynamic economy. India's voice in world affairs is undoubtedly persuasive and forceful. Unlike in the recent past, we may conclude that India is economically more robust, technologically more advanced, and militarily more formidable. So thank you, sirs. Please forgive me, sir, if I am wrong at any point. So thank you, sir. Really, I am honored. My all students, we are really grateful to you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Very
And
good.
now,
Very good summary.
thank you, sir. It's my pleasure. May I now request Ms. Khushbu Agarwal, Assistant Professor in Botany, Kalahandi University, to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Namaskar and a very good afternoon to all of you. I, Khushbu Agarwal, Assistant Professor in Botany at Kalahandi University, feeling honored to propose the formal vote of thanks on this 29th motivational talk of Uttishtata. First of all, on
Sanjeev
behalf of
sir, please mute the speaker. Sanjeev sir.
You can mute him. The organizers can mute him.
Yes, sir.
First of all, on behalf of Kalahandi University, I would like to express my profound gratitude to our esteemed invited speaker, Professor Chintamani Mahapatra sir, who is now the Pro Vice Chancellor and Professor at School of International Studies, JNU, for his true motivational words, a very concise and simple discussion on such a nice topic. Sir, we are really thankful to you for sparing your valuable time for us. Our words would definitely not be sufficient for you, sir, to convey our thanks. I most humbly thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Sanjay Kumar Satpathy, sir, for his exceptional leadership, guidance, and motivation. Thank you, sir, for always shaping us so well. I would record our deep sense of gratitude to our esteemed Register, Sri Pitambar Bhoi, sir, for his constant encouragement. Let me now express the sincere thanks to Mr. Netaji Avinandan, sir, Assistant Professor of Political Science Department at Ravencha University, for such a warm welcome address and guest introduction. My sincere thanks goes to our Deputy Registrar cum convener of this program, Captain Dr. Jaydev Sahu, sir, for this program series and for his unconditional support, coordination, and motivation. Thank you, sir. I convey my sincere thanks to Sarita Madam, Head of the Department of Political Science, Kalahandi University, for moderating and managing the session so well. My special thanks goes to Miss Lipsa for the welcome song and always for the support for this Uttishtata program. I take this opportunity to convey my thanks to all my colleagues, all the distinguished faculties, and the whole team of Kalahandi University behind this webinar for this active participation and cooperation. We sincerely also thanks to our technical team for this session. Though in last, but most importantly, I thanks to our dear students for their sincere participation in this program. At the end, I bring sincere apologies to those who directly or indirectly helped us, but I forgot to take their name unwillingly. So thank you all once again. Have a nice time.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for your wonderful vote of thanks. Now I would
This is
like
the end of the program, and thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, with the permission of chair, now may end the program.
With the song.
Satpathy, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir has left now.
Okay, okay, sir.
Because of this meeting,
Okay,
so
sir.
you may end it now.
Okay, okay, sir.
ଲିପ୍ସା ଶାନ୍ତି ପାଠ ହେଲା ନାଇଁ ଯେ
Sir,
କରିଦିଅ
actually,
ଶାନ୍ତି ପାଠ
I
ଟିକେ।
forgot. Actually, sir was so busy. Mahapatra sir told before 5 he'll leave. So I just could not request Lipsa to for Santi Pata. But anyway, we can do Santi Pata now. Lipsa, please.
ଲିପ୍ସା ପ୍ଲିଜ୍ ଲିପ୍ସା ପ୍ଲିଜ୍।
Yes.
सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामया सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Thank you, Lipsa. Thank you so much. Sir, ethi end karibe, sir.
हाँ राइट राइट ओके पुणी आर शुक्रवार को देखा हब समस्त को अशेष धन्यवाद पुणी आपण मैंने दयाकोरी आम सहित जोड़ी हेबे आसंता शुक्रवार को थैंक यू थैंक्स अ लॉट
Thank you, sir.